international diving competition that takes place here every year. Now, you could go any other time throughout the year, and this would be a totally empty place. No one goes there. It's totally barren. Just maybe like 1 or 2 people here or there show up from the island. We happened to go at the time that they were having this diving competition. When we were there 10 years ago, they didn't have this in the island. And so it had finally gotten noticed. And so there's all these people all around the place, and these people were literally diving down and seeing how far they could go. And there has been people that have actually made it all the way down to the very bottom of it. They say it's teeming with all types of life. But even with all of this, and all of the things that you see, the island is nothing to speak of. I mean, it's got some pretty scenes, but the homes that are there, many of the homes are run down. People live in these. These are actual homes that the people are living in. A lot of them are in ruins. I don't have all the pictures here, but I just had a few. This one here got cut off. This is one that they've tried, all the glass had been broken out of it, and the people that lived here were trying to board up as much as they could. This is how most people live in the island. So instead of going to an island and seeing tropical resorts and everything else, you see a place that's in poverty. It almost reminded me of like Washington, D.C. Anybody ever been to Washington before? You have these beautiful, beautiful buildings, and then around it, it seems like there's a lot of poverty all over the place. Same thing there. A lot of the other things that we see in the island is that there's a lot of buildings like this. Someone started to build this house, and because there is no credit, there is no loans, there is nowhere that you can get things like that in the island. Even some of the surrounding islands, there's not that availability. So what happens is they take what money they can, they build part of a building, and then they have to stop. And it'll sit there for another 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years like that until those people can get a little bit more money and add the next stage to it. So you have lots of buildings that are in process on the island. Those that are living there currently, a lot of them are still living in ruins. One of the things historically about Long Island is a number of years ago, I won't go through the whole history, but back in the 1800s, Long Island was actually a place where there were a lot of plantations. And the main population was a handful of settlements that were throughout the island and had a lot of slaves. Well, in the 1800s, whenever the slave trade was abolished, the slave owners said, well, there's no good staying here anymore. It's pretty, but I don't want to stay here. So they picked up, left their slaves left on the island. And so what has happened is, over a number of years now, those slaves have tried to rebuild their society, if you would, try to make a life for themselves. And it's just been in the last, I would say about 30, 40 years, that they have begun to come into their own on this island, to where they now have some established areas. They even have a store on the island, which is a big thing for them now. They have a store that they have, it's just the size of this room. Everything you can imagine, from clothes to appliances, you name it, it's all right there in that one room. So they've come a long way in the last number of years. But they still live in a place where they don't have a lot of the things that we have. Now, sorry again, it's a little skewed here. Whenever we got to the island, we began to work with the pastor and his wife. This is them there, Jimmy Fox and Cheryl Ann Fox. They have, again, been the pastors there for about 4 years now. And we have been friends with them for a long time. But as we were there, they had us continue to work with the teens. This is just one picture of one of the services that we were working with them. We worked inside the building, but we had unique opportunities. They do have a public school system there that they've established. They have 2 high schools on the island, one in the north, one in the south. I don't have the picture of it here, but we were actually invited into the public schools because they don't have a whole lot of people that come to the island and do much. So we were actually invited to come and talk with the kids and be around them and such, which was a really unique opportunity. I can't really do that necessarily in the school districts here, but there was open reign to be able to do those types of things. So we were able to work with a lot of them, saw a lot of neat things happen, but we didn't just do that. We tried to find out what was not just the immediate needs there, but what were the long-term needs on the island. And I wanted to share a couple of those with you today for your consideration. This one was the big one. I mentioned that they had 180 teens that they had coming out, but there was a total of 800 teens on the island that they have nothing to do with. I mean, it's like, what do we do with all these teens? Well, one of the things that came up was the fact that they have nowhere for these teens to go that was like a YMCA. We take that for granted here. It's like, hey, yeah, we got one over here, we got one over there. It's just a normal part of our society. They have nowhere for the kids. Basketball, I don't know if there's any basketball fans here. Basketball is huge on the island. They love basketball. But the only place they can ever go play is that they may have a hoop at this school and a hoop at that school. And if you don't have a car, which a lot of the people don't have transportation to get back and forth, you have no way to go play basketball or do anything. So what the first stage of this project I'm going to share with you was just a couple of years ago, the church we were working out of had 4 school buses donated to them from the United States. So they've started taking those 4 school buses from one end of the island to the other to gather as many teens as they can. Their hopes is to be able to increase that and to have a complete fleet of buses, hopefully in the next few years. But what this is a youth center that they would like to build. It's going to be a steel structure that's going to serve 2 main purposes. They're going to, first of all, use it as a place that will be open daily for the kids to come in to play basketball, come in to learn different skills. They're hoping to be able to teach these kids, because you have to also understand this is a community that has been primarily a fishing community for umpteen years. They know how to fish. They know how to get on a boat and go out. But these kids, because that trade has been lacking, if you would, in the Caribbean over the last few years, they don't know what to do with this. A lot of them have not been passed down the skills on how to boat and things like this, so they don't even have trades. They don't even have the ability to get jobs unless they go to a place like the United States, or if they find somewhere else. There's a couple of islands like in Nassau where you can get it and be involved like in a resort. You know, we know there's like resorts in some of these islands. They can go and work at a resort, but if they can't get a job there, they have nothing. So they're trying to figure out how to train these kids to do these types of things. So they're hoping to build this structure here, and after this gets built, it'll be used in a daily purpose for that, as well as a hurricane shelter. At this point, they don't have places really designated where you can go if there is a hurricane, and we know that the Caribbean gets plenty of hurricanes. You just huddle in your home and hope that your house stands up. That's basically what you hope for. You hope for the best in that. And some of those that have ruins, those are the ones that unfortunately don't have anywhere to go after the hurricane comes through. So they're hoping to be able to use this as a social networking place on the island. The next thing that they're also trying to do, and my wife is the one that's the expert in this, and I couldn't get the pictures from her in time before I got here today. The other thing that they have a need for is that besides fishing, the other thing in this island they've also done for many, many years has been farming. They've had very limited farming, unfortunately, because there's very small areas of land they've been able to farm over the last couple hundred years. Unfortunately, they've used up most of that land. There's not been enough replenishing. I think some of it was not from proper farming procedures. That helped to burn out some of the land. And so now they're trying to figure out how to get food. To be able to get that food, they have to have it shipped in, which is majorly expensive. And so what they've done now is this. They're trying to figure out a way of growing without having to go into the ground. So what we're working on is called raised bed gardening. And that is a product that, well, basically, if you've never seen it before, it's basically they take boards, they build a box out of it, and they don't use soil. They use a mixture of other things inside of the box to be able to actually grow the plants. And plants grow out beautifully. But it's a long-term project. They're trying to teach the people right now. Currently at the schools, they are starting a program. The church has helped to establish this. It's a program called SALT. And what they're doing is with this program is they're beginning to show these kids how to do raised bed gardening. And they're trying to teach them how to do this for a couple purposes. One thing is it'll probably provide jobs, because what they're going to do is they're going to take what they make from these plantings and they're going to sell them to the resorts and other islands. They're going to have more fresh produce instead of coming to the United States or going somewhere else. They get a lot of products from Europe, actually. And so instead of going to those places, they're going to grow all their own stuff. So we're trying to see what we can do to help establish raised bed gardening. But then there comes another issue, and that is with water. They're surrounded by water, but yet you can't drink it because there's so, it's a heavy salt content. And so what they're also doing is this. At the same time as they're doing the raised bed gardenings, they're also providing what's called a solar still. And what that will do